All right. We're moving on to the next Hannibal Lecter novel with The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. In this, the FBI is trying to track down a serial killer named Buffalo Bill who is skinning women across like the country, basically. Not the entire country, but he's targeting, as we call them, the thick ladies now, but the heavier set women. In order to track down a lead, the newest, she's not a full-fledged member of the FBI, she's still at the academy, Clarice Starling is sent to talk to Hannibal Lecter, who may or may not have been the psychiatrist for Buffalo Bill. Now, with talking about Silence of the Lambs, you gotta be careful with this, because this was written in the late 80s, and although it wasn't a new thing to be transgender, it was not as okay as it is now. And there's a distinction that Hannibal Lecter makes in this. And it's important that people hear this, because I know the LGBTQ community does not like The Silence of the Lambs typically. Because the Buffalo Bill, aka James Gumb, has gender dysphoria. It's very clear that there is some sort of gender dysphoria going on, but James Gumb is not a trans woman. I know they use a outdated term that I will not use on here because this video will get flagged. He wants to, well, there's a reason he's killing the women and skinning them, and it has to do with that. And any transition, there's a plot point with transition clinics that they won't accept him because he's a crazy person, like a serial killer. But that's something in this that's a little funky. One of the positives of this book, again, it has all of the details that Red Dragon had. I don't think it's as good. There's a different angle with this, with Clarice Starling. She's not shaded like Will Graham is, at least not in this book. Talk about Hannibal later. But in this, she's bright-eyed and, she's basically a cadet. And her interactions with Hannibal Lecter are much different than Hannibal Lecter's dealings with Will Graham are. And that's probably the highlight of the book, is the Hannibal and Clarice stuff. That is the best stuff of this book. And there's sort of cat and mouse games that Hannibal plays with her. Honestly, the Tooth Fairy was a better killer than Buffalo Bill is. The difference between Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs is that Silence of the Lambs has probably one of the greatest film adaptations of a novel that has ever existed. And Red Dragon's had 2 film adaptations that get certain aspects of the novel down, but fail in others. And then with the TV show, the last season of the Hannibal TV show, they do something a little different with the source material in its adaptation, which in and of itself, from what I've seen, is good on its own. But it's not faithful to the source material, whereas Silence of the Lambs is faithful to the source material. It's a great book on feminism, quite frankly, from a man, which is interesting. A lot of Clarice Starling's hurdles she has to go through are because she's a woman in the FBI. I mean, anything from the head of the facility that Dr. Lecter is kept at being misogynistic and coming on to her, to her male colleagues not respecting her simply because she's a woman. Like, she goes through a lot of adversity in order to get where she to accomplish what she's going for. So that in and of itself is good. It's really well written. It has probably one of the best endings I think Thomas Harris has ever written. It's really, really solid. And a lot of people consider this the last of Thomas Harris's good books. But, I mean, we will talk about Hannibal, not next review, but the following review. And I'll give my opinions on that then. But anyway, I give this a solid 4.8 out of 5. It's just slightly, it's not as good as Red Dragon, in my opinion. But it's still well worth your time to read, and it's still incredibly good. And I get why people like this over Red Dragon. It's just, in my opinion, I'm more of a Red Dragon fan. So, anyway, have a good one.